Hey Patreon viewers, Matt Easton here. Now, this is a fairly simple and small video, but it might give you an insight into my life, which I don't know if some of you want or don't want. So I just had some things turn up from an auction house, things that I'd won in auction, including a really awesome sword, which I'm going to show on the public channel, but it needs some cleaning up first. But yeah, very, very cool sword. I know who the owner was. He died in World War I, but he was with the 4th Gurkha Rifles fighting on the northwest frontier at the end of the 19th century, and had a very special sword ordered from Wilkinson, and I'm very lucky to have grabbed it. With the other things that turned up, various swords and a dagger, and with the dagger, which maybe I'll show that in a video, but I probably won't. That'll probably go up for sale on my website. But with it came something in the wrapping, and I was like, what's this? And I hadn't noticed, but it was included in the sale of the dagger. So sometimes in auctions you get various things essentially bundled together to make a lot. Now, as I now work in an auction house, I can tell you why people do that, and it's because each lot in an auction sale has a certain amount of transactional cost to putting it into that sale. So there's obviously the commission on the object, and maybe any charges associated with, when I say object I mean the lot, so that one sale, a number essentially in the sale. So let's say lot number 1. So lot number 1 has certain costs associated with it, and equally certain auction houses like my own that I work for, Chiswick Auctions, have a minimum, well, you can usually alter it, but they have usually a minimum kind of lot value that they will accept in their sale. So for example, it might be £100, they just don't want to deal with items that are below £100 per lot. So what you can do is, if you get 3 items that are valued at say £40 each, you can put them together into one lot to make one single lot 1 that's now worth, let's say, £100 to £120 estimate, because it's got 3 items that individually are worth about £40. So anyway, so essentially you sometimes get cheap things, throwaway things in antique terms anyway, maybe not throwaway to you or I, but throwaway for an auction house, because they're dealing with vast values of stuff overall, that's bundled in with other things. And that's obviously what happened. They obviously deemed this, the dagger wasn't worth a huge amount, and this other thing wasn't worth a huge amount. And what was this other thing that fell out of the wrapping? Well, it's actually not very exciting, and yet for me it's worthy of its own, at least, Patreon video, and it's this. So it is not a leather posing pouch, so some of you will know exactly what this is, and some of you will be thinking, what on earth is that? So it's not like some weird kind of mask or some item of strange tribal clothing. It is a frog. Okay, now what's a frog? Well, let's see if I've got a sword around here that I can actually do with this. Right, okay, so I actually don't have an appropriate sword. I should have arranged this better. I'll just grab the first sword, one of my favourite swords in fact, that comes to hand, okay? So here's a sword, and it has 2 rings on it, and those rings normally hang by slings off a sword belt, but around the 1870s, let's say, the use of frogs became really, really popular as a new way of wearing swords, with a new type of sword belt. Actually, not a new type of sword belt, I'll clarify in a second. With a type of sword belt that became very popular in the 1870s, known as the Sam Browne. Now, if you just simply Google Sam Browne belt, you will see lots of pictures of these. They're still used today, and you'll recognise exactly what they are, because you will have seen them being worn by police, military, all sorts. Okay, perhaps even traffic wardens in some countries. So essentially, this type of these slings and this frog connects onto the Sam Browne belt, and then you can simply drop your sword scabbard rather, into it, and it sits in there. Now, you'll notice that went through fairly easily. They normally do not if you have an earlier type of scabbard with these 2 rings on. So if you look at more recent military swords, you'll notice they usually have a leather scabbard. It's wood with leather on the outside, and they don't have any of these rings on, and the rings get in the way, and you sometimes find these steel scabbards with the rings removed and the actually, you know, sawn off, hacksawed off and filed smooth, so they'll go into a Sam Browne. Now, why was I so excited about this. Oh, just to clarify my tangents, my famous tangents there. So I said they became popular in the 1870s. In fact, they'd existed since the 1850s. So we can find pictures of early Sam Brownes in evidence in photos, particularly in India. That's where a lot of the British Army's pioneering uniform changes, most famously the use of khaki to replace red, was pioneered in India and the northwest frontier, so Afghanistan. And the Sam Browne belt, designed by Mr. Sam Browne, allegedly, although I think it was in existence before that, because he lost his arm in the Indian Mutiny, and there are photos of people already wearing Sam Browne belts in the Indian Mutiny. So anyway, I don't think he invented it, but I think that he made it famous. And I will make a video about that, but I think that might be quite controversial because it would challenge some people's view of history. But anyway, there we go. So the reason I got excited about this was because it's wide. Okay, now these are very easy to get hold of, dating from World War I, and most of the World War I ones that you can get are narrow because they're to fit the 1897 pattern infantry officer's sword, which is you know, relatively narrow sword. It's 1 inch wide blade, and the scabbard has nothing sticking out on it, so it goes in really easily. But if you've got mostly Victorian swords like me and you want to wear them with the Sam Browne in the Victorian fashion, often you find that the frog is too narrow if you use a World War I version. So having a wide one is really great, and I got it for free because I literally didn't know it'd be in the packet. So there we go. The leather's a little bit worn. I don't know if I'll actually be able to use it. It's a little bit fragile, but anyway, it's really nice to have one that technically it is wide enough to fit onto Victorian scabbards, and maybe I'll match it up with a sword in my collection that doesn't have one of these. So there we go, a little bit of an insight into the world of antique auctions and my sword collection, and the fact that small bits of leather can sometimes make me happy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys soon for the next Patreon video, and of course on the public channel. Cheers for all your support. Cheers folks.